कुछ तो लोग कहेंगे, लोगों का काम है कहना.
You're tuned into Different Strokes, and my name is Deeksha Sethi. In episode 5 of season 2, I speak to this sibling duo who found a way to thrive in a man's world. Nikita was diagnosed with breast cancer just a few months into her motherhood, and Disha struggled with a rare autoimmune condition called alopecia since she was very young. Every scar they braved, every disparaging comment that was passed on to them as advice, they took it on like a badge of honor. And yet, they wouldn't have it any other way. Please welcome the lovely sisters, Disha and Nikita.
Let me start with Nikita. Talk to me about your story of struggle and how did you manage to find your way back?
So I delivered in September 2018, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer in December 2018.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And you were just getting to know your newborn, and you were just getting a hand of being a new mother, and this happened.
Yes.
How did you take that?
Initially, not very well, obviously. The minute you're told you have cancer, the first thought that goes to your brain is, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
That's kind of like when a person is told they have cancer, that's the first thought that kind of goes into their mind without kind of really understanding what cancer really is and what it does to you and what type you have. And there's so many variables in it. So that was obviously my first thought, and I had a 3-month-old baby in my lap, and I was like, what am I going to do? She's there. I've just become a mother. I don't even know what it means to be a mom, and you're telling me I have to go through, other things now, and I have to kind of go through so much more. So initially, yes, I did not take it well, and I think throughout the whole process of even of kind of going through the chemotherapy and going through the radiation, going through all of those treatment plans that are associated with this, you do have your days where you're kind of not okay and you're not doing well. But I think over a period of time, while I was going through the whole thing, I was getting a little better with the aspect of, well, I need to fight this. I need to be on my 2 feet soon as possible and not kind of be, why me all the time, know?
Right.
So
I'm sure you must have questioned yourself, right? And the timing of it couldn't have been worse. You must have questioned the fact that why me and why now? And why couldn't I?
Yes, totally. I still do. Surprisingly, I still do. I was one of the, I like to call myself lucky number 8. 8 is because 1 in 8 women in America get breast cancer sometime in their lifetime, and lucky because I have no prior history of cancer. I have, there's no family history. I don't have any history. My genetics are pretty good. There was no genetic issue. There was no genetical cause for cancer, which is kind of like one of the causes. And there was no hormonal cause for cancer either. It just happened.
Wow.
So I still do question it. I still do kind of ask myself why it happened. But, I think sometimes you are given a challenge in life, or sometimes you're given that kind of a struggle phase in life, so that you can understand what you're really made out of, or what you're truly worth. And I think probably this was my challenge, kind of.
Right. Okay. I'm going to come back to you in a bit, and I want to talk to you about the phase of being a new mother and the struggles that you had. But I want to go back to Disha and talk to her about her struggle and the moment that she realized that she had this condition called alopecia. Disha, talk to me about that.
So actually, I've had alopecia in the form of areata, which is just like a patch that appears on your scalp, and it could be various, or it could be just like a single patch from my childhood, and it was usually temperament related, which is what usually comes through from alopecia. It is usually the stress or emotionally how your health is doing. Anyhow, that used to basically be like, very short-lived thing, because I had a very good family doctor who had like a home remedy. Once that home remedy stopped working when I grew up, then I went on to allopathy, and because this is an autoimmune condition, and with hair, and it's just like hair, so usually the since we are not very aware about it as like individuals, and I'm saying this like especially in South Asian communities, so like Indians, etc., we tend to take it like, it's like a hair issue, which it isn't. So dermatologists usually just give you steroids, which would suppress your immune system to encourage hair growth, and then it will be fine, but then you'll be back at the doctors in 2 years again. So I think at one point when I got this a little bit like a little bigger patch, I went on to homeopathy to a doctor in India, and she basically cured me in such a way that for 7 years I never saw the sight of it again until I got into a job until I got into a job which was very stressful. And I think in my 4th year of working there, it started cropping back up again, and that's how I ignored it, because I was living in denial, thinking that this is going to grow back, we'll get back onto the regular home remedy, and it's fine because it started as a patch. But then I think it just started getting a little too uncontrollable, and I went on to homeopathy. When I did that this time, without realizing the severity of it, everything that is supposed to fall out usually falls out with homeopathy, but I didn't know it would be my entire head. So that was like my first encounter with like a very, I should say, a severe form, because otherwise you usually don't really think about alopecia. And considering I've been blessed with good hair genes, I should say. I always had very long hair, I had very thick hair, and you wouldn't really tell, if I had just had my hair tied or had my hair open, you wouldn't tell, and even I couldn't tell that there was a patch. So, it's just something that you don't really realize on the daily, but you would, it at the back of your head, but you don't really give it too much importance until it becomes visible to you. So, that's how it started.
Right. And, obviously hair is to do a lot with the way anybody or everybody looks, and there's a lot of vanity associated to it, right? And self-esteem as well. So how did that impact your self-esteem?
In all honesty, I think this is very weird, and I think this is something which a lot of people have told me, or like in some different forms, like people who are close to me, or like my friends and all. But I do feel like when I initially got it, I was more than grappling with the fact that you're losing your hair. I was grappling with the fact that it had just been a really hardcore, I should say, washing machine of a year, with work, with personal life, with different things, and I was anyway not very I was a little jaded with my job. I should be very honest about that, and I was looking for a change, but I just didn't know what direction to move in and what to do and how to take the plunge, because at some point in time, and me being me the way I was, in terms of this was like the goal, that as a hamster you're just running in that wheel when you're in college, just trying to reach that I want to get into like a good company and do a good job and earn a good paycheck and all of that. And this would tick all the boxes ideally, and then you wouldn't really think of taking the leap from there. So for me, I think when I was undergoing this whole thing, when my hair was falling out and all of that was happening, I was coming to terms with all of that. I think I was more coming to terms with the fact that where am I going to go from here, and what am I going to do, and why is this happening to me? I knew it was because I wasn't emotionally very happy or peaceful, and so I knew that. I just didn't know the way out of that. So for me, I think I was more grappling with that. Having said that, I do feel like once I obviously overcame that hurdle of where next from here, I think it was more about a situation of just being able to handle other people's reactions, views, opinions rather than mine, because somehow for me, I don't know why, this very quickly became like a way of life, looking at you that way. Right. So for me, it was I think that was my biggest challenge, and I think I still face it till date. Although I'm much better with it. I may be more aggressive about it, but yeah, I feel like for me, the biggest there was another big challenge on this was that, like, so it's one thing to, like, like be strong in the face of someone, coming and questioning you inappropriately or staring at you inappropriately, or even like, when I say questioning you inappropriately, I mean, like, I'm talking about, like, these are people who have no, like, they're not even acquaintances. They're like random people who bump into a mall, who would think that you got cancer, and they will come and tell you, please stop eating sugar, please stop taking care of dairy and things like that.
Unsolicited advice.
Yeah, and I think I still get that, but like I think initially I used to get very caught off guard with it, not like offended, but caught off guard, obviously. But I think later, I think I started getting more, what do you say, like nonchalant about it. I didn't really see too much into it. What I was seeing much more into was the fact that even if people who are acquaintances came and told me, I didn't really care that much. I think this would resonate with someone who's even like an acid attack victim, or someone else who's even lost their hair because of, either undergoing chemo or whatever it is, that there is a certain shame that is attached with the secret. And I think Ayanna Pressley talked about this very well. And she said that the fact that when you are not keeping it a secret any longer, you feel so much more liberated. And you feel so much more lighter and just like normal, because otherwise you're made to feel like, you need to take this extra 5 steps to look like okay to come out of the house, which I think is a very it's a pitiful way of living, honestly. So
did you try to cover it up ever, Disha? Did you carry that kind of shame or guilt?
I was expected to do it initially. I wouldn't lie about that. And I think that's the one, like, that's the part which I was talking about, which I really had to like come to terms with,
So did anybody tell you, log kya kahenge? I mean, did you hear that a lot?
Oh yeah, 100%. I still hear it. I hear it from other people who are I should say, they think they are very, I mean, of course, some of them are very close. Of course, I have also drawn a lot of boundaries now with those so-called close relationships that I think Alopecia has been like the greatest gift to my life, I should say, because this log kya kahenge thing has come up from everywhere and even unexpected places and unexpected people. So that I think that was there.
I agree. I think that adversity can teach you, it's the best reflection of what society really is all about. Any adversity would teach you a great deal about the true character of people, and who to weed out eventually, and who are the keepers. So and that I think goes for all of us. Whoever has been through such a rough patch in life, we know who's standing by our side and who isn't. So I want to go back to you, Nikita, and I want to talk about your journey with chemotherapy. And of course, you were a new mother at that time as well, and there were obviously a lot of changes to your body happening as well. And it does leave breast cancer does leave scars on your body as well. So how are you dealing with those physical changes in your body, and what did it do to your self-esteem?
It's a lot of even what Disha just said right now. The whole log kya kahenge attitude. It's crazy because even I face that. Everything from your hair is growing now, no? So start growing it, like make it longer, or why don't you go and color your hair? I ended up having salt and pepper hair now. I've got silver haired. After they come back, and I wear it very proudly because to me that has been a badge of everything that I've gone through.
Right.
But I have had people come up to me and ask me, "Oh, why don't you color it? Oh, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? You get hair dyes which are natural. Why don't you try that? And I go like, well, it's not your concern. And B, I quite like the way I look. I don't really care. I recently had someone who asked me, "Oh, is this your granddaughter?" And I go like, well, no, she is my daughter. She is 2 years old. I am white-haired, but that doesn't mean I'm not her mom. And so initially it was tough not only to grapple your own self, to grapple with the fact that you were losing hair and you were losing, fingernails, and your skin was drying out and everything was becoming, horrible looking. But also with the fact that people do not want to perceive you in that light, or people don't want to see you in that vulnerable time of your life, and I actually went and got my hair shaved off because I was not very, very interested in having chunks of hair falling out with my daughter crawling around. There was this incident I remember. I was sitting waiting for my chemotherapy appointment to start, and I was sitting in a waiting room, and there was this lady who came who was a little older than me, a few years older than me.
Okay.
And she kept kind of, she was wearing a hat and she was wearing like a scarf underneath the hat. And she was already, into her treatment, already done a few chemotherapy, treatments. So she was already into the hair loss mode and everything. And,
Right.
she would keep shifting around with the scarf that was underneath her hat, and I was like, are you uncomfortable, because you keep playing with it? And she goes like, yeah, well, it's itchy, it hurts, and I go like, then why don't you just remove it? And I was sitting there without a cap on.
Right.
And she goes like, I wish I had your kind of, and your kind of courage to do that. And I go like, well, just try it, it'll be difficult the first time around, but hey, you've seen yourself in the mirror every day losing a bit more of hair. Every time you walk into the shower, you're losing a bit more of hair. So, lose the scarf. Maybe it'll feel a bit more comfortable,
Yeah.
And the next time I saw her at the chemotherapy appointment, she was walking around without a scarf or a cap. And she goes like, if you didn't speak to me that day, it was like, if you did speak to me that day, I never would have done this.
Nice.
And I was doing it for myself without realizing that my family was okay with me without the scarf on.
Awesome. That is so amazing. I actually
Exactly.
asked you, did you two take a picture, both of you?
Oh, yes. We
Without
were
the hair. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I do want to now.
We and our bald heads. I mean, we loved our bald heads together.
Amazing. I think that's very liberating. I'm sure it is, because especially people who, struggle with self-esteem, and when you just don't care and you define your own rules, it's absolutely liberating. And I can just feel that in your voices. It's amazing the kind of self-confidence that it gives you, especially when you trash a lot of stereotypes around you, and they're worth trashing. So I do want to ask both of you, how was, of course you were struggling individually as well, but as sisters, how important was your bond for each other in terms of, giving each other the strength and the confidence that, we're going to come out of this stronger together?
You want to go first, Didi?
Nikita, you could go first, and then I can go with Disha.
Disha was in a lot of ways my backbone throughout my many months of treatment. I think even because she has gone through so much of the adversity herself, she imagines it, she just resonates. I don't need to tell her how I'm feeling, or I don't need to kind of tell her today is a down day or today is not a good day for me. She just reads it on my face. It's funny. She's my younger one and I look up to her.
Wow.
It's like when I grow old, I want to be like her.
What about you, Disha?
So actually, I people are very close to me, and particularly my family know this about me. I'm a very big scaredy cat. I cannot take the idea of injections or doctors or hospitals or even the sight of blood. I've become a little better with it, but still. So I think just in general, I think Didi's had like her fair share of hurdles, not with health particularly, but like with different things, which are just cropped up. And I'd like to say cancer again was another one of them. And I'm not trying to say it casually. It was the I would say the biggest devil of them all, obviously, but just in general, like I feel like the way like she had to like, unfortunately with the way things were and logistically and all that, she I think did the bulk of her treatment on her own, in the sense like going alone to the hospital for your chemo or for your scans or whatever it is. And just the fact that she went through that, and I'm sorry to say this, I know it sounds very creepy or cliched, but like taking all those injections alone and not having someone to like just like panic in front of, or just hold your hand or whatever, I think for me was like the biggest example. So
sure, no, I get it. It's absolutely necessary to have somebody for moral support with you, even if it's a needle and you can brave it, but it doesn't mean that you want to brave it alone.
She's been through alopecia a lot longer than probably I've been through cancer.
Right.
It's just so I know she's had a lot more struggle, and like she said, when it comes to say me, she's super scared, or she'll always be up awake waiting. Oh, you've got your scan today, I'm going to stay awake till you don't come back home and tell me you're okay, kind of thing.
Right.
But when it comes to her, she's total badass. She can just shut anybody up. I think, that's exactly
amazing.
what I think everyone should have. I'm not as badass as her.
Disha, I want to hear more about your badassery. Do you have any incident that you can recall where you actually gave it to somebody?
Not on alopecia actually, because most of the time I'm at the risk of annoying like my friends or people who have been in these situations with me. I usually laugh it off, if I've met somebody maybe just 1 or 2 times, and that person is like an acquaintance, like I said, and they say something untoward, and I usually just laugh it off, because I'm genuinely laughing primarily because I find this inherent thing in a lot of, and again I'm going to be very racist here, I'm going to say that South Asians primarily, like I find this inherent thing in us, especially for people on the subcontinent, where they're just like they're not asking you out of the bid to like educate themselves. They're asking you out of the bid of giving you a solution to a problem they have no idea of.
Yeah.
So, and I think you can sense that.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I feel like so usually I used to laugh it off out of pure just humoring myself as to how ignorant can someone be. But I feel like I have post alopecia given it back to our quote unquote aunties, and I'm talking about aunties who are frequents at our house, or like we have like a social relationship with. And then every corner you turn, especially in a place like Dubai, where like things like your presentation, what shoes you're wearing, what designer you're wearing, your hair makeup is done, it's a lot of flash. So I think the fact that you are even like judged as to how effective you're at your work or your job based on how you're dressed, it's a very odd requirement, but still I think having been in a society like that and like navigating this society with alopecia, I think just taught me that there is no way it's going to stop, right? It'll never stop coming at you, but you mentally need to like draw that boundary. And that's when I started like actually implementing this whole rent concept, that if this person doesn't pay my rent and doesn't put food on my table, I don't care if I share a 30-year relationship with you, I will not care to shut you up about it. So
no, absolutely, you're comfortable in your skin. And I was just thinking when you were talking about your whole experience, that it's obviously harder for you because you're a woman. Had it been a bald guy, it wouldn't have been so.
If you see a bald man, even if you will see like a man with his eyebrows shaved off walking down the road, people will be like, oh yeah, he's a hairstylist for sure. They're the hippie ones, and they've like they're the ones who keep trying these things out on themselves. But God forbid if they see a woman, and it'll automatically be assumed. Like I've had people actually coming and diagnosing me and telling me, oh, you have lymphoma.
Oh dear.
Yeah, so it's not even.
You're a stylist? As a matter of fact that you are.
Yes, I am. So I feel like it's like it's gotten that specific to the point that I really have a good laugh about it. But yeah.
Wow. I'm so glad we are trying to expose the hypocrisy of our own society, and we're a part of it actually. We're also very much a part of the problem. And I do want to ask you about the beauty industry, the fashion industry that you're a part of. How is that as an experience for you?
So I do feel like there was a lot of spotlight also in terms of the perspective of like, maybe I can't take you as my assistant, or maybe I can't do this, or maybe I can't do that because you're not really presentable, quote unquote, in my books.
Really?
I did feel that, a sense of that. Having said that, like my my batchmates, like I've done jobs with them, like alongside them. Some of them I've assisted whenever I've been in town in India, and it's honestly been such a easy ride, because there isn't one person on the set who would like look at you like, oh my god, I think this woman has cancer, or look at you thinking like, are you like okay, or something wrong with you, because honestly everyone just that doesn't care over there. I think Mumbai as a place is also that kind of place where the pace is just like, get the job done, and that's about it. That's all I need from you. So I think it was a breeze working there. It's been a breeze working here as well, even on the assisting work I've done in terms of like assisting actual artists, but also like independent work that I've done over here, in terms of whether you call editorial, you call private client work, or bridals, or whatever it is. Having said that, again, like there were certain clients or certain, I should say, maybe certain models or people that I've worked with who were just like, very dumbfounded by the way I looked. And they would either have reservations about the way my work would be, considering you're not really coming up with a full face of makeup to work. And because I'm just not a person who would wear a complete full glam to work, but also like in terms of just like in general, like, oh my god, you don't have hair, will you be able to style my hair? Like that would be the question mark on your face. All in all, I think it's been a very easy, it's been pretty easy as a ride for me, I should say. I think the fact that working in this industry did also possibly give me a lot more confidence, because as much as I didn't want to accept it, I think only when you start like dressing women, and women are, although being a woman, and I'm talking this about my own breed, they are very hard to please. So I do feel like whether you have like, the most lustrous hair, or the longest lashes, or the best lips, or whatever it is, you are going to be unhappy about one thing about how you look, at least. I think the biggest lesson or takeaway from this professional part of my life is that you will never draw the line, and you'll never be 100% happy in your own eyes. So I think for me, maybe that also just made me so much more like, unfazed by alopecia, I should say.
A lot more women these days are actually, kind of willingly going flat-chested and not kind of going in for like
implants.
Having implants and having the whole procedures, all the procedures done with getting plastic surgery done on them and everything. They're very willingly kind of going ahead and saying, hey, you know what? I don't have them. I'm very happy not having, something that looks sensuous rather than and pleasing the male folk, and probably causing a hindrance to my health. Perceptions are changing. They're slow to change, but perceptions are definitely changing. I did not have a mastectomy. I was one of the lucky ones who only had to go through a lumpectomy.
Okay.
So I have one breast which is smaller than the other, very physically noticeable. But it really doesn't matter to me. It honestly doesn't matter to me. It's okay.
It shouldn't matter as long as you're healthy. I want to come back to your journey with your daughter. And you were obviously a new mother at that time, right? When you were going through chemotherapy as well. And there was a lot that you were taking on. And motherhood itself is very overwhelming as an experience. I know for a fact that because my journey was very overwhelming. It wasn't easy at all. And I slipped into postpartum depression as well. Did you face any of that upheaval with yourself?
I think with me it was almost tenfold because I was only 3 months into the whole mothering process, and I always say this. I have actually said this on a few other podcasts too. We don't, as mothers, we're not given the time to heal our own selves.
I agree.
We are not given the time to start feeling comfortable. It's a big change,
Yeah.
especially for a mother. You are feeding your child, you are cleaning your child, you're in this autonomy zone. You're like a robot, right? Where you're
Huge
just
responsibility, massive.
exactly, and you're working like a clockwork. You're just going on and on, day in and day out. Every day is like kind of a new thing is happening. Baby is crying, baby is burping, baby this, baby that. You're not kind of
Sleepless, you're
connecting.
exhausted, and you're not able to connect to the child at all.
You're not connecting. You're not mentally connecting with your child. You are in that autonomous zone. You have your grandparents. My sister was there when I delivered. There was this immediate connection of, oh, I love her. But for me, that took a little time to come, and I didn't have that. I did not even have that connection, and I was already into that phase of, oh, you can't breastfeed your child anymore because we need to get you started on chemotherapy, or we need to get you started on other stuff, so you need to stop breastfeeding your child. So there's this other push that you need to do to kind of get her secure with other things. I don't believe that we can be by the books as moms or as dads or as parents. I don't think we can be anymore by the book. We have to be a lot more flexible and allow our children the flexibility to grow, and allow the children the flexibility to kind of learn and understand. And I think that's kind of come with this whole journey with cancer, with kind of not having that connection, not being there, physically not being there for her. It just changed. It just changed me to be like, okay, she doesn't want to eat today, fine, don't eat. Every parent, if we say every child is different and should be handled differently, why are we parenting by the book?
Correct.
Straightforward. Why do we parent? Why do we have a set rule for parents? I mean,
tell me something. When you said that you were obviously not able to breastfeed your daughter, did you feel guilty about it? And did any advice came your way that, this is important, how can you not? And
I did have a lot of advice for sure. I've had a lot of people come up to me and tell me, how can you not breastfeed your child? Breastfeeding is the best. Breastfeeding is this, breastfeeding is that. Go check again, maybe it's not cancer. I've had that. Have another, get another opinion, get a third one, get a fourth one. Why don't you go and get another biopsy done? Maybe they'll find something different. I mean, I was like, have you had a biopsy in the first place? Do you know how much it hurts?
I'm
it's
amazed at the lack of empathy, around.
Oh, totally. And I did have a lot of that. I was not as hurt with the fact that I couldn't breastfeed, only because breastfeeding with me also initially was a little difficult. It was actually, from the very beginning, was a little tough, right? And it is tough with all mothers, which we don't kind of realize. It's not natural.
No, it is.
It's just not natural,
I hate to admit it, but I didn't like it one bit.
None. I don't think a lot of moms like it, It's a different thing that moms do it because they have to, but I don't think a lot of moms like it, because you're kind of conditioned from our ancestors' time. Breast is best. I was conditioned in the same way. I've had times where I've actually broken down and cried my eyes out, and I can't do this. This is not happening. Why is it not happening? And all of that stuff. But I think by the time I got diagnosed with cancer, I was like, well, this is it. It really doesn't matter. She's getting food. She's fed. She's thriving. She's gaining weight. Really, that's all that matters. One of this it was a very funny thing that someone had told me. If you don't breastfeed your child, you're never going to have a connection with your child.
Oh, I was just going to say that. Somebody must have, this is just, I think this is just ridiculous when, somebody tells you that if you've not had a natural birth,
my child loves to sleep.
Or you've not breastfed your child, you're not a complete mother, or you don't have that real connection. I was like,
real connection, yeah. And my daughter does not sleep with anyone else. She only sleeps with me.
Right.
She will not sleep till I'm not next to her. The minute I get up, she will get up. she knows. So
Yeah.
you know, she at the age of 8 or 9 months used to wipe my tears when I used to cry. She used to be sitting next to me. She would just sit down there next to me and she would rub her, you know, her hand on my face. So she knew because I was not well or I was not good. If that is not connection, then I don't know what is connection.
Yeah.
What connection are they talking about, honestly?
I know. Well, haters are gonna hate. And वो कहते हैं ना हिंदी में लोगों का काम है कहना.
Honestly, it brings us back to what even Disha was mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
You know, log kya kahenge? This whole concept that we have of log kya kahenge. You know, they're not ready for the difficult conversations. No one's ready to listen.
Yeah.
To
Sorry,
use.
if I can interject, I think more
Yes.
than the difficult conversation, I think it's also about the people who really have no experience with whatever it is that you
It
both
is,
of you are
exactly.
talking about, or like even with alopecia, whatever else it is, and they're ready to like give you, as you very rightly said, Diksha, unsolicited advice. So
Yeah, and they're not willing to listen. They're not willing
No,
to sit
not
down
at all.
and even talk to
I
you
feel
about
like
it.
I feel like they've not even questioned themselves if they are comfortable with this thing that they've been conditioned from their birth to, like, you know, believe in.
Yeah.
That, like you said, breastfeeding gives you connection with your child, or like, you know, you need to have you know, a 32-inch waist, or like you need to be this high, like tall, or you need to be this skin color, or have hair, and why is that necessary is never questioned. And I feel like people who question that are looked down upon so much that you're actually even questioning that this is not something you should even raise as a question.
Yeah. No,
Like,
I
I feel-
agree.
I feel people find that very disrespectful, and I don't understand why. Because then, in all honesty, you know, the university should shut down. We should not be educated as a race anymore.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
and then we should all get off social media and just
And
live
then-
in a world where there is no information.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I think it's harder for women, I believe. It's again coming down to the same thing, that it's harder for women because men are allowed to question. They can smash you know, all sorts of stereotypes around them, but women cannot question patriarchy. They cannot question old jaded traditions. They just can't question anything that can give them you know, a peace of mind, or you know, regain their confidence or their dignity, or anything
Right.
for that matter. So it's sad, and we're in 2021 and we're still, you know, asking ourselves these questions. Why aren't we questioning you know, these traditions? Why aren't we questioning these people? Really?
Just
Yeah.
like a breed, women are so hardwired to, like, you know, either do it right or not do it
Or
at
do
all.
it at all. Yeah.
Exactly. And I feel like that speaks to a lot to your question as well. And just in general, like, you know, I don't know, like, I feel like it's a very sad state of affairs, but I feel like that's one of the reasons, like, we're even questioning, because I feel like a lot of women sort of it's not about being feminists or about being, you know, people who believe in equality, quote unquote, or whatever. It's just about being like, you know, I'm a human being, and I'm not even talking about what my genitals look like or what gender I am. I'm just talking about how I'm, you know, doing this, and it may be not what you normally see, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it feels right, and that it's not hurting anybody, and it seems to be benefiting somebody or whatever, and it's working towards a general purpose, and I feel like there needs to be acceptance for that.
Yeah. And do you think because you work in the beauty industry, the fashion industry, entertainment industry, do you think that has something to do with feeding into our perceptions of, you know, how women should always behave, you know, proper and perfect, and like they cannot falter. They're not allowed to falter.
Brands are being held accountable because there are a fair few which have even got boycotted for not even, you know, considering that there is you know, a certain shade range as part of their market, that their actual market, not even their target market, and the fact that they've ignored certain races or people of color or whatever it is.
It's a great conversation we're having today, but I think we've gone over an hour now, and my editor's gonna shoot me. so let's try and get into the fun section, and then we'll wrap this up. Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
And because we can really go on and on about these conversations, and there's so many things that all of us will relate to, and we will have a lot of experiences to share here, but we do have to be cautious of the time. So I'm going to start with you, Nikita, and let's do the rapid fire.
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to ask you some rapid questions, and you have to give me some fiery answers. Okay. Describe yourself in one word.
Crazy.
Your guilty pleasure.
My guilty pleasure. Current guilty pleasure is actually finding the right bra.
Do you have a lot of like a collection of luxury lingerie?
No,
No?
just very basic because, like I said, my one breast is smaller than the other. Nothing
Right.
fits.
Right. So nothing customized that you're able to get.
Believe it or not, the market for customized is almost non-existent currently.
There's a
We
business
have
idea
in
there,
America. It is exactly.
ladies. You should put your bald heads together. Do something about it.
Definitely.
Okay. If you were stranded on an island, who would you like to have by your side?
I would say two people. Three actually. Sorry, Disha, definitely my daughter, and my other cousin Aditi. Because I mean, the four of us, we have a full on party. I mean, we're a blast. So
Okay.
definitely them.
So then it's not going to be stranded anymore.
No.
Okay. If you were given a superpower, what would that be?
If I was given a superpower, what would that be? For me, my superpower, I wish, was ignorance.
Yeah.
Only because ignorance is bliss. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I just sometimes you just wish you didn't have that kind of knowledge, you know.
Yeah, I understand. I think I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, and
Having
you know,
too
then you
much-
get to kind of experience and learn things on your own
Yeah.
rather than people sitting on your head and telling you what to do and what not to do, you know.
Yeah. Sometimes,
Yeah.
just being dumb is such a blessing. Pata hi nahi hai
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Pata nahi hai, but then at least you can find out on your own, you know.
Yeah.
Make your mistake, learn from it, get up from it, you know, like fall and get up. That's the best, I feel.
Yeah, when you're too aware and you're too smart about things, and then nobody gives you a second chance to even falter. I feel, right?
Exactly. Totally.
Yeah. One thing that you admire about your sister.
Her badassery. She's absolutely badass. She doesn't tell you or she doesn't sound like one, but she is.
No, she doesn't sound like one at all. Okay. And what is it that annoys you about her?
The fact that when she gets into the groove, she's not going to listen to you, but it will strike her later on.
Okay.
Like, stop and listen.
Okay. The best piece of advice that you received from Disha.
The best piece of advice I have received from Disha has always been get up, and she does not mince her words when she says get up. She's very stern about it. She's very strong about it. She will just say, get the F up, just get up, stop. Don't cry, just get out, That just those two words, when she says it just, even if I'm in the worst of places, it kind of springs me back.
Right. No, that's very sound advice, actually.
It is.
No, thank you so much. That was really a fiery way to go about it. I'm going to go to Disha now. So your turn. How do you define beauty, Disha?
How do you define beauty? Boundless.
Oh yeah. Describe yourself in one word.
Relentless.
What's your guilty pleasure?
Pizza.
Oh yeah. Okay. And if you were stranded on an island, who would you be stuck with?
I'm just going to edit Didi's list. It's going to be her daughter and my cousin Aditi. This is like it's also one of my guilty pleasures, just like spending time with kids and children in general. I feel like it's the biggest stress buster.
Oh, well, the opposite of it is quite true as well. So
Yeah. I know everyone tells me this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And if you had a superpower, what would that be?
To influence someone's mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Deep.
Yeah.
That's the hardest to do, actually.
It is. That's why it's a superpower, right?
I see the next Dalai Lama here. Okay. One thing that you admire about Nikita.
That that she's not someone who makes bones about about an adversity, in the sense of, in terms of like just in like the endurance of the adversity, like she would talk about like, okay, this is, this is shit and this is like difficult or whatever, but like just the fact that if she's enduring it, like the extent to how much you have to endure, she never like really complains. I've never heard her complain or ever like crib about something, and I think that is something I really admire.
Nice.
Yeah.
And one thing that annoys you about her?
That she talks in long-winded circles.
You spoke more than me, but
Okay. Okay. And what is the best piece of advice that you've gotten from her?
To talk it out. I'm actually someone who's a very big overthinker. I can analyze like the heck out of something, but I feel like this is something which Didi will always bring me back to the ground and be like, you need to talk this out, or like talk it out with a person, or have a confrontation or a conversation, whatever it is.
Okay.
And oftentimes that's worked in my favor. Yeah.
I think that's a very, very sound advice, and it would really apply to somebody like me as well, because I'm also like that. And I understand where she's coming from. Yeah, sometimes you just have to talk it out, and you're like,
get out of your head and talk it out. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm generally a very big talker. Anybody who knows me knows I can talk and talk and talk.
We figured out.
So
I figured out. Okay, thank you so much, ladies. It has been a pleasure having both of you, and your journeys are amazing. You're doing some really badass stuff. Your confidence is something to be absolutely envious of. So just keep doing that badass stuff, keep marching ahead with your head held high, and just stop listening to the stupid advice that you get around you.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.